The Seattle Kraken got a overtime shootout win over the St. Louis Blues behind a performance by Philip Grubauer that is likely to go down as his last as a member of the Seattle Kraken.
You are Locked On Kraken, your daily podcast on the Seattle Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what do you say, Seattle hockey fans? Welcome to another episode of Locked On Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where we bring you your favorite team, the Seattle Kraken, every single day. I'm Erica L. Ayala, your host of Locked On Kraken, on the road again in my UMA hat, because you know I had to pack it. We've got one more game, so one more chance for me to wear this, at least for the Kraken. We'll have to talk about that later on the show. And the Seattle Kraken, they get a win. Overtime. Shootout, win for Philip Grubauer in what's likely his last game. And we didn't hear from Philip Grubauer after the game. We heard from Dan Bylsma that he wasn't 100% in net, but he toughed it out. It wasn't a quality start per the instant analysis by Allison Lucan. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But I thought it was interesting that we didn't get to hear from Philip Grubauer. It sounds like perhaps it's because he was under the weather. I do know, because I'm in some of the media chats that happen, or I am in the media chats that happen with the Seattle Kraken, that he was originally requested, and then that request was changed. Again, if I had to guess, I think it has to do something with Philip Grubauer wasn't feeling 100%. I've talked about that, about him not feeling 100% and then expecting to play hockey games. So not surprising, but still disappointing. Because this was likely his last game as a member of the Seattle Kraken. Now, I've been critical of Philip Grubauer down the stretch. I've also, I don't want to say defended him, but I've tried to cut down some of the noise that Grubauer got really early, because there were some things that were definitely on Philip Grubauer, and there were other things that were more indicative of the team, quite honestly, just not being structured properly. And it's a little bittersweet for me, or maybe not really bittersweet is not the right term. I think I'm a little conflicted in how I'm feeling. I do think it's best to move on from Philip Grubauer and find a better companion, or tandem in goal for the Seattle Kraken. I think we've needed to figure this out for really the last 4 years. Goaltending has been a bugaboo for the Seattle Kraken. And as I've talked about before on the show, I don't like how this was handled. I can't really make heads or tails of it. It doesn't seem fair in some respects. Fair is a tough word when it comes to business, and especially in sports. It just feels like it could have been handled differently. I didn't like how the send down to Coachella Valley was handled. I haven't liked that Philip Grubauer didn't get games, and then he gets a start, and we hear, how well he's played since coming back from Coachella Valley has earned him more starts, but he really didn't get that many more starts after a certain time. So, I feel conflicted. I'm sure fans feel conflicted. We'll never forget the playoff run, and that was Philip Grubauer keeping us in games. 2 Game 7s in the playoffs. We win against Colorado, lose to Dallas, and Philip Grubauer was huge for us. And again, there have been times where he just wasn't enough. But he was enough for the Seattle Kraken to get a win over the St. Louis Blues, a 4-3 win for the Seattle Kraken. You had Jaden Schwartz that started things off early. If you listen to our pregame episode, I said, I want us to start early, boys. And the first goal of the game comes in the second period, and it belonged to Jaden Schwartz, number 25, 25th goal for Jaden Schwartz, assisted by Eberle. And then the third period was just kind of chaos. Things were slow, and then they picked up. In the third period, we had all of the rest of the goals. So 3 goals for St. Louis, 2 goals for the Seattle Kraken, including Shane Wright getting the last goal of the third frame that tied the game 3-3. defensive lapses for sure in this game, breakaway opportunities, giveaways that allowed the St. Louis Blues to get back into this game. We heard so much that the Seattle Kraken knew that they were going to play a desperate style, and I don't think that we really rose to the occasion. I mentioned the goals from I mentioned the goals from Jaden Schwartz and Shane Wright. We also got a goal from Mikey Eastman, who Shane was very complimentary of. And then we went to a 7-round shootout for the Seattle Kraken. Ellie Tolvanen got things started with the first make, and then Capo Caco, as well as Chandler Stevenson. And, I don't regret that I called to attention some of his deficits towards the middle end of the season or the middle portion of the season, but he has definitely picked things up. I'd say Chandler Stevenson has seemed really locked in since maybe around the Four Nations break. And if that's the vision, and if he can continue to just stay locked in, then I feel a little bit better about him being one of our 7-7 guys. This was a Kraken kind of gritty win, had to come from behind at one point in time. But overall, I'll take the win, obviously. Is it the last game? Is it the last win for Philip Grubauer? Probably. I'm going to take you to what Dan Bylsma said post-game. And, he was complimentary of Philip Grubauer. And it just kind of was like, I don't know. I don't know. I'm not there in Seattle right now. I'm on the road again right now, but it just felt kind of like a goodbye. We've talked about it. There was no trade for Philip Grubauer, so that means, a buyout of his contract. But let's hear what Dan Bylsma had to say post-game.
Gruby didn't feel so great in going into tonight's game. He was sick in Utah, and still recovering, I'll say. And he was exhausted at the end. But I think the last, of the starts that he's had since he's come back have been, really the goaltender he can be. Tonight he was really solid. Gave us a chance early on, made the big save on the PK again. Missed the shave on Shen in the third was massive, and good for him getting the shootout win.
So that was Dan Bylsma talking about Philip Grubauer, again indicating that Philip Grubauer, after that game against the St. Louis Blues, wasn't feeling particularly well. I'm not clear on why, I'm not clear if him not feeling well had to do with why he did not speak to media, but I wouldn't be surprised if that were the reason. When we look at the post-game instant analysis, as I mentioned, not considered a quality start for either goaltender. Only 13 of 17 shots, 13 shots saved out of a total of 17 for Binnington. 23 shots. So Grubauer even outworked his, counterpart for the Blues in net. Negative 0.07 goals saved. So just a scotch less than we would expect him to save in this game. I thought it was a solid game. Again, he did what he needed to do. 3 goals against for this team, not great. There was one goal where he kind of had it in the pads and then it slid out. There was another time where I think Grubauer pretty much, it looked to me like he really had the puck. And then I think it was Robert Thomas comes and maybe he saw a puck and so tries to swipe it away. Philip Grubauer kind of pushed his stick out of the way. So a solid game. What we needed from Philip Grubauer is what we got. And we also got some performances from the players. I thought Ellie Tolvanen was obviously a good example of that. Shane Wright had a good game. And, Jaden Schwartz getting it started. Eberle connecting on a lot of things, creating. He actually had the most shot attempts, 5 overall, out of 39 shot attempts for your Seattle Kraken. 44 shot attempts for the Blues, and they had multiple players with 7 shot attempts. That's something that we need to see the Seattle Kraken work on for next season. And it was interesting because I think it was Jeff Baker who was asking not just the players, but also Dan Bylsma, how does what we're seeing now from this Kraken team carry over into training camp? And I think the answers were a little bit of a mixed bag. And we've talked about this, right? Eberle wants this team to focus on now and have that be building blocks into their offseason and next year. That's clear as day that that's what Jordan Eberle wants. And, we go back to the Tuchman's model. Allison Lucan had a great story about Tuchman. And that was season 1. Like, that's a callback. And then I geeked out about it. And that's one of the times that we had Allison Lucan on the show. We haven't had her on in a while, so might have to work on that. But the Tuchman's model is basically this, it's group phase theory is what it's known as and is associated with Tuchman. But can't remember his first name right now. But anyway, it's group phase theory. It's this concept that groups, like a team, go through different phases. And the final phase is once you have performed or, competed, done whatever the task at hand is, then you dissolve, the team dissolves. And that happens every year in teams. You have some pieces that come back. And then, of course, we'll have some pieces that won't come back. We'll definitely have additions. And so on the one hand, for the folks that are coming back per Tuchman's model, and thinking about that, I do think that what's happening now matters. It matters for Shane Wright. It matters for Ryan Winterton, who has been recalled, I believe, once again, or reassigned, excuse me. It matters for Yanni Newman. It matters for Ty Cartier. It matters for if we see Mike Ysimon. Does it matter for Philip Grubauer? I don't think that it does. This was more of the closing of a chapter, perhaps, because I don't think we're going to see him against LA. I'd be very surprised. I would be for it, but I would also be surprised. This is a team that it has some elements that we know are going to stay. And so for those guys, McCann, Eberle, Schwartz, Vince Dunn, Matty Beniers, we need them to remember this and remember the fight that they offered. Brandon Montour talked about that the other day. We know we have the capability of doing this. It's disappointing that we haven't done it this season, but we come back for more. On the other hand, as far as momentum and the question that Jeff Baker was asking around the locker room, there's a part of me that you don't want to remember this too much. You don't want to reflect on this too much. You kind of have to flush this season in some ways. You take what you can and you leave the rest. This is an opportunity this offseason for the Seattle Kraken organization to reset. And we're not saying retool, rebuild, whatever, but if this is a team that says we're not rebuilding, we want to be competitive, then you have to reset the focus at most. Or at the least, I should say. You have to reset the focus because that's what was missing. We can talk about injuries. Injuries are always going to happen. We can talk about all kinds of other things, but at the end of the day, this team did not have consistency. And so flush that, keep a reminder of what it felt like to not be a consistent team, to not put your best foot forward every night in and night out, and got to do better. And I do like that Eberle has already challenged this team to think about what they're going to do in the offseason to come back better and ready to go. Coming up on today's episode of Locked On Kraken, let's talk a little bit more about Shane Wright. I know a lot of you are disappointed with his minutes, although I hear you. I'm not completely sold that we should be up in arms about this, and there are a few different reasons why, including that, again, this isn't a reset. This kind of moral victory kind of situation towards the end of the season doesn't matter for Philip Grubauer, but it does matter for Shane Wright. And I might have a hot take regarding Kraken rookies that you want to hear. We'll get into that coming up on today's episode of Locked On Kraken. And today's episode of Locked On Kraken is brought to you by our friends at Indeed. You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed's sponsored jobs puts your post at the top of the page and helps you reach the right candidates faster. I'm a small business owner. I know how important it is to get the right help because sometimes you think things are going to work out and then you start putting people through the paces of what it takes to do the job. And either you or them or both of you realize this isn't a good fit. And that takes time away from doing the job. So getting a good match using a program like Indeed, where they'll sponsor your job and make sure it gets to the right people, hopefully eliminates some of that back and forth. And now you can speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/locked on right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Are you hiring? Then you need Indeed. Thanks as always for making Locked On Kraken a part of your daily destination. Erica L. Ayala here, your host of Locked On Kraken. I'm in New York right now. I'll be on CBS Sports talking about the WNBA draft, and I'm super excited to work alongside Tarika Foster-Brasby. So if you are going to watch the draft, make sure you check in on CBS Sports HQ, which is our 24/7 streaming channel, and I will have your coverage. The Seattle Storm has the number 2 pick overall. Who do you want to see them take? A lot of people saying they're going to take Dominique Malunga. Sonia Citron could be another good pick for the Seattle Storm. If you want to know more about that, though, then head over to Black Rosie Media on YouTube. We just did a live stream yesterday with a few of our contributors talking about the Seattle Storm and what they need. But what about your Seattle Kraken? What do they need? Well, a lot of people want to see them really activate Shane Wright. And I agree. I'm not as put out by his minutes on the fourth line. And let me tell you why. This organization clearly is taking a more calculated approach when it comes to the development of Shane Wright. And honestly, I think that's okay. For whatever reason, whether it's what Shane needs or what the organization needs from Shane, it's taking a little time. But what I can tell you is Shane Wright is in good spirits about it. I think he's got the right attitude. He did have something in the postgame pressers that I found a little bit interesting regarding the shootout. And I want to take you to what Shane Wright said, and I'll point out, I want to see if you hear what he said about the shootout first, but we'll break this down because Shane Wright got his 19th goal in the game against St. Louis. Can he get to 20? He's got one more game to do it against the LA Kings. But here's what Shane Wright had to say after the shootout win against St. Louis.
Shane, you're at 19 goals now for the season. I mean, when you came into the year, what were your expectations and how close have you come, would you say, to getting close to them at this point?
I mean, for me, I feel like I always, set pretty high expectations for myself. So I'm always, expecting more and want to push myself to do more and do better always. So, obviously it's been a great year. It's, had a lot of success and, learn a lot about myself and how to play here. So, definitely been a great year.
Were you confident that your goal was going to stand up when they went to review it?
I was confident until I saw the replay. It looked like I kind of moved my foot a little bit forward, but I know I didn't try to kick at it, and I was able to just get the bounce there.
Did you see it hitting off your foot, or you're just kind of driving to the net there? Is it just a lucky bounce?
Yeah, I kind of saw it coming into my feet. My stick was tied up a little bit, so I just tried to get something on it, just get a touch, and I looked down, the puck was rolling into the net, so definitely fortunate bounce for sure.
What's that like on the bench when they're doing a review like that and you're looking up at a goal and trying to figure out are they, aren't, are they, won't they, kind of waiting that out?
A lot of guys trying to reassure you. A lot of guys are like, you didn't kick it right, or you're good, you didn't kick it. But everyone's like, no, did you feel like you kicked it? Did you not? So everyone's looking at like the screens behind the bench there, seeing if we did or not. But definitely little anxious moments for sure.
What was your take on how this game played out, just being that it was so low event for 2 periods and then it kind of changes in the third there?
Yeah, I mean, they're a team fighting for the playoffs right now, and we knew that coming in, and we wanted to play spoiler a little bit, and we wanted to fight hard and win this game for Gruby as well, and really happy with how we fought back, and nice to get the win.
What was the intensity like on the bench during that shootout? It seemed to be going on quite a while. Yeah,
it was intense. We wanted to win bad. Would have liked to contribute there, but great goals from the guys who scored, and big assists from Gruby too.
How important is it to win Tuesday night for the fans? Fan appreciation night.
Yeah, I think it's huge. End the year on a high note. Obviously, hasn't been the year we quite expected, but to be able to come in and fan appreciation night to win the last one would be really special for sure.
Shane, you were playing with Mikey Ayala tonight. What's he kind of brought to the team? What's he like to play with the kind of feistiness that he seems to have? Yeah,
Mikey was amazing tonight. He's been amazing for us ever since he's got traded here, and he's fast. He brings a lot of energy, a lot of passion. He's getting up and down the sheet. He's finishing hits, and he's a great guy in the room as well. And I like playing with him a lot.
I love how much Shane Wright loves talking about Mikey Ayala, and I think in some ways this is related. What I was getting at earlier is that I do think that Shane Wright is, I don't want to say they're using kid gloves for Shane Wright, although maybe I'll feel differently once we get to next season. But I do think there's some cautious, optimism when it comes to Shane Wright as compared to Matty Beniers, who we needed him in the lineup right away. But having players that Shane feels comfortable with, Mikey Ayala being one of them, I think he played great with Oliver Bjorkstrand. Oh, Ollie, I miss you, Ollie. I think he played great with Oliver Bjorkstrand and Ellie Tolvanen. Tolvi we still have on the team. Shane Wright can play up and down this lineup. Can he do that consistently? I don't know yet. And I don't think we have to know just yet. But by giving him those kinds of reps, I do think it's going to benefit him in the long run. And this is my hard take. I think Shane Wright will be better equipped for NHL hockey with the Seattle Kraken organization than Matty Beniers. If the Matty Beniers trajectory stays the way it is, I do think that there'll be some slippage. I would love to see, especially now that we have Jessica Campbell on our coaching staff, I'd love to see them work with Matty on his skating a little bit more. I can't say that I know for sure if that is happening. It is a question that I will ask Jessica Campbell, and I'll have an opportunity to do that pretty quickly into the offseason. I'll get into that a little bit later in the coming weeks, I'd say. But I think that, and it was like the shade that John Forsland threw at Matty Beniers. Like, I think he meant it in fun, but also there was a little shade that John Forsland threw. If you listen to the broadcast, Matty Beniers was one of the shooters in the shootout. And John said, what was the line, right? The high priest of head fakes, because Matty was like doing all of this work. And I mean, it's a shootout. That's what some people do. But I thought I wanted to pull that because I do think that there are movements that Matty Beniers has when he's skating that take away from him being able to propel himself and get some momentum and speed. He's kind of a side skater, a waddler, and I think he needs to really bend his knees. For those of you who saw the Jessica Campbell full interview, you'll know about that joke, but he needs to bend his knees, get down, and propel forward. And I want to see him get faster is what I'm saying. I think he can get stronger. I mentioned this on a podcast way early, but when I was in Seattle for training camp and preseason, I immediately noticed that Shane had put on some weight and good weight, right? Muscle. Matty, I think, is still trying to figure out what is an optimal weight and a way to gain weight for him. What a problem to have. But he can take some of my weight. I'll help the team with what I got. And I've got some extra weight for you, Matty. No, jokes aside, I really think that Shane and this cautious optimism is going to benefit him and the team in the long run. And there's a world in which, he solidifies perhaps a top spot. I don't know if it's going to be, one of our top 6 forwards. Chandler Stevenson is still on the team. And the way he's being paid, he's going to be a top line centerman. Matty Beniers has an extension as well. Is it possible for Shane Wright to bump up to that first, second line, have Matty bump down a little bit? I think that's more possible, but I don't think you're going to see Shane Wright usurp either one of those two players. So, that gives him third, fourth line minutes throughout the season. And I think that's okay for now. But again, my hot take, bold prediction is that Shane Wright might have because he has a better development trajectory, he might be the better centerman for the Seattle Kraken in the long run. And did you catch it from the clip that I played? Shane Wright wanted to be in that shootout. He said it very nice, polite, very Shane Wright of him, but he did mention it in passing. And I love that he's got that fire in him as well. There's still things that he wants on this team. There's still things that he wants to accomplish. And he said for him, the biggest lesson, or I'm paraphrasing, for me, it sounded like the biggest lesson for him is just to not be so hard on himself and let the game and let the process come to him. So I'm excited for Shane Wright. I'm not giving up on Matty Beniers. Again, 2025 is supposed to be the year of Beniers. And so I love that Jessica Campbell is having those conversations with Matty, but they're not going to give him a 3-game reset. Not the way this team is structured. He doesn't have that luxury, Matty Beniers. And so it's extra work. And it sounds like he is putting in the extra work. Matty's game might seem like it is a little stagnant for some people. The scoring has been coming more than last year, but maybe not where we want to see it. But he's being asked to do something different than what Shane Wright is being asked to do, or what Shane Wright, perhaps in a manner of speaking, is being protected from having to do while he's still learning the NHL game. But if we can get those two on the same accord, we're great up the middle. I'm starting to soften about the idea of Chandler Stevenson. I'm taking a breath. If the man continues to play defense, I'm down. Coming up, let's talk about your Kansas City Mavericks, because they are going to the postseason, and we've got some awards that have been given out, a milestone that has been reached for your ECHL affiliate. So we'll get into that coming up on today's episode of Locked On Kraken. Today's episode of Locked On Kraken brought to you by Monarch Money. And listen, have you ever looked at your bank account and laughed and then cried and wondered, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, not to mention just traveling as much as someone like me does, it's easy to lose track of your spending. And that's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. But Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. And I, as a Monarch Money user myself, can tell you this command center is pretty strong. Muy fuerte. That's right. Because I love that I can see the different dashboards, like my cash flow, all of my investments, expenses. I can put all of that into Monarch Money and then see the customized and see the dashboards in real time. And it's really helped me keep a handle on my business spending, which is critically important. And as I'm working with a new bookkeeper now, I don't have to pull out receipts from a shoebox. I can work with them using Monarch Money. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. Thanks as always, Seattle hockey fans, for making Locked On Kraken a part of your daily destination. Erica L. Ayala, your host here, wearing the UMA hat, aka our Pirates hat that we wear for wins. I have no idea why the Seattle Kraken got rid of the Davy Jones hat and the way the team performed overall this season. I sure hope they bring it back. But speaking of the hat, or I guess now the belt, Philip Grubauer did get that belt. Again, what seems like it was his last game as a member of the Seattle Kraken. Maybe not his last at Climate Pledge Arena, but definitely his last, it feels like, as a member of the Seattle Kraken. Question of the day. Do you think the Philip Grubauer era is over? let me know in the comments on YouTube. We've gotten so many great comments on YouTube. I'm starting to regularly use them in the show because y'all have some great comments and I love it. Okay, but it's a Monday. And that means we get to talk about the Kansas City Mavericks. They are not only playoff bound, but they have clinched their division. The Seattle Mavericks are on top of the Mountain Division and atop the Western Conference overall. And to boot, the Kansas City Mavericks also have Cade Bouchard, who is the AMI Graphics ECHL Plus Performer of the Year. He has a plus 43 on the season, and that's just wild. So after Bouchard's plus 43, Florida's Jordan Sambrook had a plus 37 rating, Jaden Lee of South Carolina a plus 36, and Jake McLaughlin from the Kansas City Mavericks a plus 35. And Cade's plus 43 is better than Max Andreev, who had a plus 34 and was the plus minus ratings leader alongside Grant Gabriel from Toledo last year. And the highest since we had a plus 53 by Cody Haskinen and Matt Register, both from the Idaho Steelheads in the 22-23 season. So the Kansas City Mavericks, they are once again going to be taking on the Tulsa Oilers. I thought this was going to be the case. I really did. And so they're taking on Tulsa. Of course, I'm not in Tulsa, but that's okay because neither are the Oilers. The schedule right now for the games is there's a game on April 18th. The games are on Friday, April 18th, Saturday, April 19th, and then Tuesday, April 22nd at Tulsa. So we've got April 22nd and April 24th at Tulsa. You best believe your girl is going to be at those games. I'm super excited for that. I'll definitely be at the Tuesday game. Thursday is kickball day, so I have to see. There's almost never enough women in a co-ed league, and I'm kind of sort of the coach, which happened very accidentally. I did not volunteer. I was voluntold. That's what happens when you're a former NCAA athlete. People just give you the responsibility. I probably would have done coach-like things anyway. The point is, I'm not sure if I'll be at the game on the 24th, but it's been a little difficult to connect with Tad. They have a new PR person, and ECHL runs a little bit different than the AHL and NHL, but the good news is that we have a great contact at Tulsa, and they always know that when Kansas City is in town that I will want to be at the games. So I'm hoping, like last year, I can have some ECHL content for you because the Kansas City Mavericks are taking on the Tulsa Oilers in the Mountain Division semifinals. And wrapping up our Mavericks Monday, congratulations, stick taps, felicidades to Tad O'Had, who in the last game for your Kansas City Mavericks reached 200 wins as head coach of Kansas City. And it was a 3-2 overtime win. So got it in, dramatic fashion. David Cotton had the overtime winner 9 seconds into OT. So they wanted to get it done. Love that. But congratulations to Tad. Under his leadership, I'm reading this from the press release, quote, under his leadership, the Mavericks have achieved historic success, including a franchise record 54 wins during the 23-24 season, a Brabham Cup title as ECHL regular season champions, and the club's first ever trip to the Kelly Cup finals. So there you go. Tad O'Had is a great hockey mind. Love chatting with him and look forward to seeing him and the rest of the boys in Tulsa as the Kansas City Mavericks take on the Tulsa Oilers in the first round. We've seen this matchup before. Tulsa started pretty well this year. They struggled in prior seasons, but this year they started off pretty well, obviously in the playoffs once again. So I'm curious to see what Kansas City can do. The games between Kansas City and Tulsa can be pretty lopsided. One team gets dominated, and then maybe they play a close game, and then they flip sides and the team that just got whomped the day before or the last few games comes out and has a breakout. I do think that there's a little bit of a rivalry. Now, granted, I only ever see Kansas City play Tulsa in person. That being said, I have seen Tulsa play other teams, and I don't know. I think Tulsa for sure. They definitely they're definitely always ready to muck it up when Kansas City is in town. I'll say it that way. So I think it's going to be a great series. I do have Kansas City with the edge, and I think they can get a sweep, but I would not bet on it. I'm not a betting woman, and I definitely don't bet on sports that I cover, even if I did bet, which I don't. But this is going to be an interesting matchup, and I think it's going to really be indicative of the mindset of this Kansas City Mavericks team. Very skilled team, but I've seen them flounder early in the season, but I know that Coach O'Had is going to have them ready to go, so I will have you covered for that. And of course, we'll have our Firebirds Fridays, and honestly, the Kansas City Mavericks Mondays and the Coachella Valley Firebird Fridays are probably going to blend throughout all 5 days of our coverage here. These, not all of the players on the roster, of course, but enough of them are going to be players that are within our prospect pool and that you might see in Seattle in a Kraken jersey if you haven't already, because we do have some overlap, of course, with the Firebirds and even with your Kansas City Mavericks. I will have you covered here. So just a reminder, hey, have a great day. I know it's a little different than our usual vibe, which of course is be kind to yourself and be kind to others. And remember, let's hold fast. Let's stay true. We got one more game, Seattle Kraken fans, and 2 playoff runs for our prospect teams. And we will have you covered right here on Locked On Kraken. Let's go Kraken. We'll say loud and proud. And for the last time tomorrow at CPA, I can't even believe it. Time goes by. Anyway, we'll have you covered here. So I will catch you on the next episode. Peace out, everybody.